Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is our third installment of a webinar series on community planning for vehicle electrification. And today's topic is workforce development for EV readiness. Thank you for joining. I'm Chase Macpherson. I am a manager on the communities team at NEEP, Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships, and I will kick us off. Next slide, please. So a couple of housekeeping notes. We are recording this webinar and we will send it out to registrants after, and it'll be posted on NEEP's YouTube page. In NEEP's ongoing effort to improve accessibility, we have enabled closed captioning, so you can control that feature in the lower right corner under captions. All lines for participants will remain on mute because we are in the webinar format, but please feel free to use the chat and Q&A. If you have questions for the panelists, please put them in the Q&A and I will work them into the conversation. And chat is available for comments, discussion, collaboration, etc. Next slide, please. So Northeast Energy Efficiency Partnerships is a nonpartisan nonprofit founded in 1996. We are one of 6 regional energy efficiency organizations that cover the whole country. And we envision the region's homes, buildings, businesses, and communities as efficient, affordable, low carbon, and resilient places to live, work, and play. So we work from West Virginia up to Maine on efficiency and decarbonization and energy affordability. Next slide, please. I would like to take a moment to thank our foundations and federal funders, particularly the U.S. Department of Energy, who is the funder for the project that enables this webinar series. I will explain a little bit more about the project in a moment, but thank you to the Department of Energy. Next slide. I'd also like to thank NEEP's Allies Network, which, as you can see, is a really large group that supports our work, and we really appreciate the support and collaboration. Next slide, please. And finally, our state partners. We could not do this work without all of these organizations supporting us. Here you can see in teal the states in our region that have signed on for state partnerships supporting NEEP's work. Next slide, please. So like I said, I am Chase Macpherson, and I am a manager on NEEP's communities team, and I have gotten to work with these 3 panelists for the past 2 years on this project funded by the Department of Energy. So during our discussion, we will hear from Daphne Dixon, co-founder and executive director at Live Green, Connecticut, John Haffner, regional planner at the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission. I've had a lot of practice saying that name. And Peggy Vivanco, director at the Vermont Clean Communities Coalition. So looking forward to inviting them on to talk about the work that they've been doing on EV workforce readiness. Next slide, please. So the project that I've mentioned is called Community-Driven Transportation Plans for the Northeast. Like I said, funded by the Department of Energy, and it's specifically from the Vehicle Technologies Office. The purpose of the project is to support 4 target communities across New England in developing community-led clean transportation implementation plans to improve mobility, increase reliable and efficient access to healthcare, food, education, and employment, increase employment in transportation, clean transportation, and identify paths for future economic development. So it is an extensive planning project, and it is 2.5 years total. We are 2 years in now. Next slide, please. We have 4 target communities. We will be discussing 3 of them today. The first is the Upper Valley, which is part of Vermont and New Hampshire. and it's shown on the map there. It's not a specific jurisdiction, in terms of government, but a collection of towns and counties across 2 states. We also have the Champlain Valley, which is where Burlington is, farther north, and then Bridgeport, Connecticut. Winsted, Connecticut is our 4th target community, but like I said, we're going to focus on the first 3 for today's conversation. Next slide. So the partners that we're going to hear from today for the past couple of months have been conducting EV workforce needs assessments. And just to frame a little bit of what that means, I wanted to list out some of the jobs that are within the scope of the EV workforce. So EV workforce can include EV technicians and mechanics, charging technicians, electricians, many different kinds of engineers, commercial driver's license holders driving, first responders, salespeople, assemblers, vehicle and battery manufacturing roles, battery recycling, code officials, and even more. But I wanted to give you a sense of the kinds of jobs we're talking about. So for the workforce needs assessments, when our partners, Daphne, John, and Peggy on this project set out to understand what the, gaps and barriers are to the EV workforce in their communities, they surveyed and interviewed stakeholders and also did desk research. And the stakeholders that they had take surveys and that they interviewed include car dealers, transit agencies, educational institutions such as high schools, community colleges, universities, adult education in some instances, maybe, electric bus dealers, business owners, training providers for EV-related trainings, community-based organizations, municipalities, and more. But those are some of the main ones that informed the takeaways that our partners have on what the main needs and gaps and barriers are to workforce readiness for supporting increased electrification of vehicles in their communities. Next slide, please. So instead of having each presenter start with slides, we're going to do, essentially a full 45 or so minutes of discussion. So I'd like to invite my presenters on camera to join me. Hello.
Hi, Chase.
Okay, there you are, John. So thank you all for being here today. I want to start by just asking you for a brief introduction of who you are and why you're here in this work and on this webinar. Daphne, I'll start with you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Daphne Dixon, Executive Director of the Clean Transportation Coalition of Western Connecticut and of Live Green Connecticut. And I'm really excited to be a part of this project because, workforce development is something that we've been looking at for several years now. And the communities that we're working in, although they're amazing, there is, a lot of opportunity to increase development in that area. And we've learned so much from this program. And what we've learned from all the surveys is really going to take us forward into the communities and really help to provide more resources for the people who need them most.
Great, thank you. And John, I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, Chase. My name is John Haffner. I am a regional planner with Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission. See, you even did it better than I did.
I'm better at saying it.
I know, and we are located in the Upper Valley of New Hampshire, and we're working on this project, as Chase mentioned, with the communities in the Upper Valley, which is a loose confederation of different municipalities that are in Vermont and New Hampshire, and really interested in this project from our position as a regional planning commission, from that planning perspective. And I like to think about planning in theory and practice as just a deep and abiding concern for the future. And I think that this sort of project, looking at the future of transportation and transportation technologies, is incredibly important. And in particular, what's important to that future is the questions around workforce development and what are the opportunities for mobilizing a workforce around these new vehicle technologies and how they can engage with and solve issues and challenges related to the future of transportation. So really excited to be here and discuss what we've learned from our standpoint.
Great, thank you. And Peggy.
Hi, folks. I'm Peggy O'Neill Vivanco, Coalition Director for Vermont Clean Communities. I'm based up in Burlington in the Champlain Valley, and our work really focused on food and transportation access. So we were looking at how folks are getting to get food. And our interviews really led us down the path of a lot of people using transit to get food. So our focus really went down, the transit route, pun intended there, and looking at, some of our partners, Green Mountain Transit in particular, and what they're doing to add alternative fueled vehicles to their fleet, especially electric vehicles, and then what are the training needs for the bus drivers, technicians. I did interview other transit providers who also serve this area, and as well as first responders, really trying to figure out how do we get our heads around what are all the pieces that we need to be considering as we look at transportation, alternative fuels, and making sure that we have safe and accessible transportation for all our community members. Thanks, Chase.
Great, thank you. So I listed some of the job titles that fall under EV workforce. Full disclosure to the audience, I have read write-ups from each of these communities needs assessments, and they will be published on NEEP's website soon. We will share that with our community of practice. But I'm curious which of these jobs came up most frequently as pain points in the supply chain or workflow, and where the biggest gaps are in the workforce in your particular communities. John, how about we start with you?
Sure. I would say from our interviews and experience talking with folks, the gaps tend to just be in electricians in general. And you could apply this specifically to EV readiness and EV charger installation. But I think also it's just, it runs across various different industries and professions.
Comes up a lot with heat pump workforce.
Yeah. And so I think a positive way of looking at that is that investing in workforce readiness in terms of electricians and electrician training, there's a lot of opportunities for those workers in particular to get engaged in various different industries and trades, and also, solving the challenges of developing workforce for EV readiness also applies to a number of different technologies around across the board. So, it points to, I think, a deep concern for the workforce needs for EV readiness, but it also points to that there's opportunity for shared investment and shared collaboration across a number of different industries.
Mm-hmm. Before I turn it to Daphne and Peggy, I want to just stay here a little bit longer. I know that you've spoken with Revision, where this problem does kind of come across EVs and solar and other technologies. Can you share a little bit about what you heard from them and who Revision is?
Yeah, so Revision Energy is a clean energy installer. They install solar panels, EV charging infrastructure, and they are based in, they operate in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Maine. And they had such a challenge acquiring electricians that they started their own training programs for EV charging installation and solar installation. And the sort of talking to them and to a number of different people in their company was that they understood that there was always going to be a need for electricians. And so not needing to go out into to search too much within the broader labor market, they could just create that capacity within their own company and their own operations. So there's a willingness to invest in that skilled labor force because they recognized it as such a need, and it was just a reciprocal investment for their workforce. Gave them the opportunity to have career mobility and stability, and also gave the company some enough of a sort of they could protect against a lack of labor force elsewhere. So that was sort of the main driver for coming to that conclusion that investing in a skilled labor force like electricians is a way to kind of absorb some of the risk that is inherent within the labor market.
Yeah, great. Daphne, what about in Bridgeport? What were the job titles that came up the most, or the biggest gaps?
Well, the biggest gaps that we've seen is with the municipalities. So, the training that the fleet people in the municipality would need to work on these kinds of vehicles. And so what we have learned by talking to Bridgeport and to other municipalities is they don't always have the people on staff to actually take care of those kinds of cars. But what they do as a solution is they work with the dealers where they purchase the vehicles and have those dealers, in some cases, do any kind of maintenance that they need to do. The dealers, though, they have some trouble retaining people to do that work, and then also it's quite an extensive process to get technicians trained on all the particular vehicles. So that's one challenge, and there's also in Bridgeport, there's also the transit buses. We have electric transit buses in Bridgeport, and that fleet is growing, and making sure that there's enough technicians to take care of ongoing needs is something that they're looking to plan for and to delve deeper into that.
Right. So a lot of need around maintenance and technicians.
Mhm.
And Peggy, same question about biggest gaps or job titles that came up the most.
Really ditto from what John and Daphne said. Speaking about transit in particular, the technicians, bus drivers, charging infrastructure. So those are, really kind of electrician basics, but also going deeper into the safety and EV technician training. And then I'm just looking at my notes, Chase. Also, the kind of the planning staff, making sure, and I see someone from GMT on this call, maybe he'll have some great questions later, but also making sure that the planning staff, while folks are going out for new vehicles, that there are these kind of wraparound pieces, that we have figured out the location for the charging and any upfitting that a garage needs, and what are the charging locations if they need to charge off-site. So just really kind of the soup to nuts, or the wraparound of this alternative fueling system.
Yeah, in our battery safety webinar, we had Adams Carroll from Advanced Transit talk about all the work, that had to go into just preparing to have electric buses. Daphne?
And I just want to add something. So this might be a little off, but the other the other need, it's kind of ongoing, and I think it's really for all of us in the whole country. Little off topic, but it's also the learning around how to handle fires, EV fires. And so, these are folks already in the job, the fire department, the firemen and emergency services, but just, more training around that. I know, here in Connecticut, for all the towns and for most places around the country, that is a high priority, getting that additional sort of training around that, because it's a big issue and a safety issue.
I would to add to that, again, it's slightly off, but I think we can't talk about one without talking about the other. One of the fire chiefs that I spoke with, and he was on one of the webinars that we had, that NEEP put on a couple weeks ago, or was it last week? He spoke about, in the ideal world, first responders would try to figure out how to deal with any new technology before we roll out the technology. And he recognizes that's not a reality, but that bit of workforce training for first responders also deals with greater education and actual prevention. So not treating a regular like a diesel powered bus is very different than an electric bus. An electric bike is different than a regular bike. So recognizing that while they look the same and they run similar, they really are different when you have a thermal event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many ways in which it would be great for us to have everything figured out for technology before it starts getting out there. I mean, we've seen that with AI is like all over the place, and in so many ways about the social ramifications, but also the energy ramifications and the effects on the grid. And as people, we want to get more EVs out there, but also we need to be able to fix them when they break down and deal with any safety hazards. So it's always this interesting arms race with any new technology.
Yeah, and I think related to that understanding of the new technology and its impacts, it's not just about understanding its application and safety, but if you need to put a lot of investments into the built environment in order to really take full advantage of that technology, that takes an immense amount of resources and like you mentioned, Peggy, planning for where do you locate this charging infrastructure? How do you add capacity to the grid? What is the workforce that is needed to make that happen? And I think, hopefully we're doing that in intelligent and cooperative ways so that we're not, putting a bunch of investments into a built environment that are not being utilized or being useful, but actually figuring out how these long-term investments can be, most effectively leveraged.
And one last little thing, speaking of the built environment and EVs and fires, we've even seen cities that are changing their EV zoning regulations that would potentially require EV parking in garages, if it's even allowed, but if it is allowed in garages, to be zoned for, so that it has the easiest access for fire trucks and for fires, so that they don't want the charging stations in garages down someplace where if there was a fire, it'd be very difficult. So even things like that, like planning for parking spaces in case there's a fire. So stuff just reaches in so many corners of our universes.
Yeah, and the needs for zoning go beyond just safety. I mean, about equity and access and making sure, that we are prepared for a greater number of EVs than we have right now, so that, people can feel that assuredness that there is the infrastructure and then start to get excited about owning an EV themselves or using electric transit.
Yeah, and I think, that relates to sort of the municipal workforce, Daphne, that you were referring to earlier, and that needing to understand how municipalities have access to the skills and knowledge to be able to figure out how do they want to change their zoning ordinance, how do they engage their communities in participating in those changes. So up where we're at, we have the city of Lebanon in New Hampshire. They're exploring changes to their zoning ordinance to think about how new developments can add and be clear about what they are required to add in terms of EV charging infrastructure. So, and that's especially related because most of charging happens either at work or at home. And so if you are a resident of a larger apartment complex and those apartment complexes are not adding EV charging infrastructure to the development, then you don't have necessarily the same opportunities as somebody who may be living in their own, an owner-occupied single-family home. So figuring out how to think about writing municipal code so that the investments being made into the built environment are able to be accessible by different building typologies and different developments.
Yeah. We have already touched on so many different things. For the audience, if there is a particular rabbit hole you want to go down, put your question in the chat. One thing I am interested to go back to is something you mentioned, Daphne, that for the dealers, I think in particular, it's hard to get people trained on all the particular vehicles. And something that comes up a lot with EVs is how much proprietary technology there is and how many things just don't work across different manufacturers and brands of cars. And I'm wondering how much that came up in your conversations for the whole group.
Yeah, well, what we learned, and probably, John and Peggy know this too. And we also went to a workforce event sponsored by another coalition over in Pennsylvania, which was really helpful. But, usually with these jobs, what's required is just, basic technician training about cars. So first of all, you just have to have that basic. But then, each model has its own very specific thing. So what dealers do is they may hire somebody who has like that basic information, that basic certification to work on vehicles. But then they have to send them away, to their training facilities to learn their specific things. So there's no like one all catch-all EV training school. You really have to learn each one independently. And learning through the dealers is one very good way to do it.
John or Peggy, is that something that came up for you too?
And talking with, I think it's really interesting, Daphne, that you were able to, I think, engage with the dealers in that way and learn from that. Because when we talked to dealers up in our region, it was very clear that EV adoption was being driven by, I think, a particular portion of the consumers that were really eager adopters of it. So they told us that that people would come looking for a vehicle and they would know kind of exactly what it was that they wanted, and that dealers sort of didn't have to have that knowledge base. But I think that, and there's nothing wrong with that per se. It just kind of means that EV adoption might be limited to a particular set of the consumer population that is really actively learning about electric vehicles. And so how do you, if you really want to scale up EV adoption, there needs to be, I think, education by dealerships to just be knowledgeable about what their products are that they're offering. And I think kind of a willingness to meet consumers on those products. So it's another kind of one of those, I think, soft skills. I'd never really thought about sales as being a part of the workforce that would need to be developed in order for EV adoption to take place. But that's what we were seeing when we were talking to dealerships. Yeah,
and our dealers around this area, they sell to a lot of municipalities. They sell to police departments as well. They have a lot of outreach to the municipal fleet and also to the police fleets.
Maybe mine's more of a little bit of a tragic story. One of my stakeholders who's also on this project got received funding to purchase an electric van.
Yeah.
And I felt like they didn't have, it was, you know, a community-based organization doing a lot of kind of direct action. And someone helped them with a grant to get this electric vehicle. They were great. This is great. They had no place to charge the vehicle. There was no one, you know, so they were just going to send it to the back to the dealer for any issues. There wasn't training. It was just, here's some funding, here's this great new technology, and it's going to work for you, and this, that, and the other. And it didn't. Like the whole education piece of what is the duty cycle. I mean, this is where Clean Cities and Communities, we go down our little rabbit hole of like, wait, we need to know the duty cycle before you can, you know, consider this. And where are you going to charge it? So that education piece that both John and Daphne mentioned is super important. That really touches, you know, on literally everyone who touches the vehicle, and that it isn't just like you buy something new and you're going to roll it off the lot. In order for it to be really an effective tool, you need, again, all those wraparound pieces and understanding of what really are the best applications for some of the alternative fuel vehicles, especially electric, especially in, you know, cold climates like Vermont. I didn't deal with the dealers. I didn't work with the dealers, but my transit folks, even like the one who I thought was like, they've got game on, they even feel like they're only partially prepared for the transition to electric vehicles, because I think once you start going down, not even the rabbit hole, going down the lane of what are the technician training pathways, what are the pathways to, you know, deepen the understanding of your current workforce, how do you plan for bringing in new workers who are going to be able to have some skills or level up. And they're saying they have a hard enough time getting just a regular technician, much less even looking for someone who has any sort of EV certification. And that's where, you know, if you think about workforce development and this pipeline going to our secondary and post-secondary training centers to bring them along on this journey.
And this may segue to your next question, Chase, but you know, this is a whole new industry, right? Like we've been in it all for a while now, so it's maybe to us EVs don't feel new, but I mean, we talked to plenty of people who don't, like, their awareness of EVs is like nil. So just even knowing about EVs as like an industry is in some cases kind of a new concept for a lot of people, you know. So it's really kind of like you're saying, building this pipeline. First of all, of even awareness that it exists, and people might not even know that there's such thing as an EV technician job. So just, you know, opening up their minds to that. So, you know, we're all in the beginning stages of this, really, as a country.
Yeah, I think that that's such a great point, Daphne. You know, because so much of, I think, EV adoption thus far has been driven by those early adopters. And for them, maybe it seems like this is technology that's been around for a long time and has a really rich and deep history, and it certainly does. But similar to you, we've talked to so many people where just as from the user perspective, EVs are still a very novel technology. And so getting to that point where, you know, they actually see it as also as a not just a user of EVs, but as somebody who may be working within that field and that industry. So I think, you know, thinking about widespread EV adoption is also going to require, I think, a shifting the thinking to be that the EV industry in and of itself is actually something that is worth investing in, not just being a kind of a consumer of.
Yeah, and I would say even like the mom and pop shops are really important to bring them along with us. Like we have a plug-in hybrid, so just like on a personal level here, and we bring our vehicle to, you know, the mom and pop shop, who is fantastic. We have a great relationship with them. And it took a while before they got any sort of EV safety certification. I was ready to be like, I'm going to take a collection so you guys can get certified. Um, but again, we don't, you know, sometimes there are things that are, you know, necessary for the dealers when you're under warranty. And then other things where if we want robust communities, if we want the trained technician who's coming out of post-secondary training to be able to get a job, to be able to have choices to get a job with a mom and pop shop in their community or to go to a dealer, this is what I think what we need to do is to really have these expansive training opportunities and bring as many folks into them as possible. And you know, it's going to take investment and it will take some time, but I don't know, John and I are ready to get started in this. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about the training series you're planning?
John, go for
Sure.
it. We're so
Yeah.
excited.
So we're trying to, so there's an organization called Advanced Vehicle Technologies Group that runs EV technician trainings and they've available for municipal staff, for mechanics, for transit agencies. And we're organizing a few training opportunities in Vermont, one up in the Burlington area and one down here in the Upper Valley, and also an online training that is looking at just essential EV skills and safety, and then also thinking about low voltage and high voltage skills needed for EV maintenance. And I think one of the things that is really important about this that we're trying to do is that we have seen a lot of great opportunities that other trainers have put together. I mentioned Revision Energy earlier, and that there's a lot of wonderful opportunities available in career and technical schools. We've got one here at the Hartford Area Career and Technology Center that provides EV technician training to high school students. But it's just that these skills are so they're needed so badly in so many different parts of several different industries. And so we're trying to make these things available to, in particular in our region, where municipalities might not have access to these trainings if they weren't sort of organized and brought to them in a way that's accessible and available. So we're trying to be a part of, I think, the solution through making training opportunities available to, I think, you know, people who might just think that, well, this isn't really for us. We don't have a huge EV industry in our area. But I think if we're wanting to imagine what the future demand and need might be, then I think it's important to put together these kinds of opportunities.
And John, you touched on the technical high school, and Bridgeport has an amazing technical high school, and there's a lot of different things that are taught there for the students, but electrician is one of the ones that does support the EV industry. So we're very happy that that technical school is so robust and, you know, provides people at that younger age an on-ramp into, you know, a good paying job that they can be in for several years. But getting kind of down into, you know, into Bridgeport, one of the challenges, you know, that there is that some of the best technician training is kind of a hike. You know, it's a little bit difficult to get to. There is the possibility of working with this other facility, you know, on some transportation things, but you know, it's hard. And one of the challenges also, you know, we've seen in Bridgeport is if, you know, again, people don't really, you know, the awareness that these jobs exist. And then if they are interested in being in this EV world, you know, if they're not in high school, if they're past that, the trainings at these facilities can be difficult to get to. And then, you know, in some cases, there's just other skills that some folks need, even just to get to the training. Maybe they need to brush up on their communication skills, their written skills, their reading skills. Maybe they need help with with clothing. And so there's in some cases there's these other barriers that are present with some folks, just even getting to even getting the training. And then let's say they, they get the clothes and they brush up on their reading and writing and arithmetic, and they get into that training. And then there are these jobs, maybe they come from a family that, has had a cycle of poverty, and they don't really understand how to interview properly, and maybe they don't have the confidence, and maybe they don't see themselves as having a good job. And then so there's all these other factors that can come into play. And although Bridgeport is an amazing city, and from 1850 to the 1920s, it led the country in innovation and workforce, and it has amazing people. Currently there is a group of people that are in sort of this more of a poverty cycle, and they need these other sort of life skills to really help them move into these jobs. And we have discovered through this program that there are a lot of organizations in Bridgeport that address this. But what I think is needed, and what people have talked about, is um, a greater structure, um, and more collaboration with all these groups that are providing these wraparound services, and then collaboration with the city. And I know these efforts go on at some degree, and there's many people that have done workforce development in the past, like Adrian Will and so many people. But I think there's a real need um, to move the workforce forward, to really focus on these other skills to help folks just even get prepared for the training and for the jobs.
Daphne, are you working with your community-based partners on those other pieces to be able to, because you're right, we talk about this workforce development, and when you mentioned, attire, if you think about a white collar job, oh, you need, either a jacket or a nice shirt, skirt, or trousers. In some of these fields, you actually need to have like proper footwear
Right.
that's expensive, and how to get, how to even just get into the right kind of clothing to be able to participate in this. What are your like your ecosystem, or what can other folks like us learn from what you're learning in Bridgeport?
Well, what we've learned is, so I've worked in Bridgeport for, off and on for many years, and there's always more to learn, and there's always new organizations. And in the last year or so, we've met with and talked with organizations I really wasn't aware of before. And so, we're in these daily conversations and clarity sessions about, what can be possible, and how could there be more collaboration, and what would it look like to have a system. And I know that there's folks in Bridgeport, through conversations, that have been looking to devise a system that actually tracks, seems very impersonal, so I don't really like that word, but um, identifies folks that go to a lot of different programs but aren't getting the traction. They go to this program for this, they go to this program for that, but they're not really getting the training.
Is it the city that's doing that?
No, these are other private organizations. And so working with the city and with others, so that it's this more uniform structure, so that people aren't just meeting people individually, but there's like a database of sorts, which there is a little bit of that now, but a more robust one that really allows for more support, and really helping people sort of graduate to next level, not just go from one program to another, but like
Mhm.
what's the accelerated, what's the off ramp to the next. And so, that those are conversations that we're in now, and hoping to I mean, it's an amazing city with amazing people doing a lot of great work, and Bridgeport has done a lot of phenomenal workforce development with energy efficiency. So I know that the structures exist in energy efficiency. And so, like, how do we then use that model that's been used for energy efficiency to help people get job training and get jobs? And how is that used as a model for EV technician training, because in a lot of cases the structure is already there. Maybe there needs to be some more wraparound services, but it's just been tremendous, this grant, to be able to have these conversations and talk with these groups and see what it could be like to do for EV technician training, what has been done for energy efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so hard when there's so many different programs that are all trying to address
They're
different
so
needs,
good.
but their funding all has these different, boundaries and rules. And
Yeah.
I mean, we all know this, like obviously NEEP's a nonprofit. We, run into things where we can't quite partner with another organization because it doesn't quite align with the rules of our
Mhm.
funding. And so there's so many little places for people to fall out. And
Mhm.
I really appreciate the focus on what it could look like if it worked, and how to just kind of fill in those gaps where people are falling through.
And I do think that there's a missing piece. And I talked with one organization I had never met before last week. And I said this before, but I really know that there's this missing piece about how people, the potential that they feel for themselves, and their belief that they can actually get through the training, despite maybe being a single mom or a single parent, or having, difficult circumstances, like, having some sort of container of support, emotional support, to move through the challenging um, prospect of going through training and getting a new job. These are hard things for anybody, and especially if you don't have the support or a family structure that supports this kind of thing. There is a couple of really amazing groups that meet weekly that do support people in that way, and the people in those groups do succeed. But there just needs to be more of them, because they work. Those groups that I know of, Hang Time and others, they do work. There just needs to be more of them.
Hmm. John, in the Upper Valley, what do you think the opportunity is if we could, get this all right?
Well, I think, and this is kind of pertinent to the comment in the chat, is you know, looking at this from a supply and demand perspective, you know, it that the supply and demand is generally uneven. There are some investments that are being made in a variety of different places, and um, I mentioned the city of Lebanon being really progressive in trying to go after some opportunities for EV investment and adoption. I mentioned Revision Energy as a one company that is really, mobilizing resources to invest in workforce. But there are a number of different places that where these supply side investments are not being made. And so how do you build up an opportunity for EV adoption if those kinds of things are not happening? And so I think it is a trying to look at a community-wide opportunity, and however you want to define community, it could be regional, it could be municipal in Daphne's case. But I think that, what we're seeing here, where we have sections of our region that are moving ahead and are very proactive in trying to make plans, develop a workforce, create opportunities for a growing industry. Do you see that happening? But then there are others where it's in some ways it's seen as just like, well, that's not for our community, or where we're dealing with other more immediate needs, basic needs that we're trying to address. And so how do we think about actually developing a long-term workforce for an industry that doesn't even exist within our communities right now? So I think it's a matter of sharing resources, sharing knowledge, I think understanding that there is um, value in having a collective buy-in into this sort of thing. Because I think even from the perspective of the more affluent early adopter kind of communities, that is only going to take you so far. And if you're kind of holding tight to your own resources and really only caring about your piece of that pie, it's going to be hard to, I think, reach a scale where we're actually seeing wider use of these technologies and that kind of aggregate demand that the comment was talking about. In order to increase that demand, you sort of need to find a way to have more people participating in the project, and in a I think in an actual authentic way too, that people
Mm-hmm.
actually want to be a part of it and want to see
Yeah.
these efforts move forward.
You can't just tell them this is coming, you need
Right.
to get ready, but you have to actually show them and make them believe that it's, something that's beneficial for them. I mean, like the whole idea of like sharing resources and knowledge and collective buy-in, it's like, especially with transportation, you're going to be driving out of your town. And
Mhm.
if there's no charger over there, you're going to start to feel that, And so there you do, because there is so much interconnectedness, you do need to think outside of your bubble.
And I think that that's why it's such a promising opportunity that transit providers are such great partners in this.
Yeah.
And in particular, where we're at, I can't sing the praises of Advanced Transit enough for what they've been doing to really create an opportunity and space for investment in electric buses and clean transportation, but also in other parts of our region in Sullivan County. So Sullivan County Transportation, they might not be making investments in electrification of their fleet, but they're earnest participants in the business of getting people where they need to go. And I've developed, I think, a really, even if it's not adopting new technologies, they're adopting new models like mobility management network. New Hampshire, I think, has done a great job of you know, creating these networks of people in the business of just helping other people get where they need to go. And so that's going to be, you know, I think we would be in our best interest to encourage those frameworks and those networks to think about how electrification can fit into their systems, and then also take their systems and apply it into places that have already made the investments in electrification. So it's not just these technical skills, it's also these very, socially kind of minded professions like social workers and people in customer service, and like I mentioned before, in sales. So it's not just about the skilled workforce, it's about also the, I think, community frameworks that we're using.
And
Mhm.
just to sort of slip in, like, how do you actually get people to be aware of EVs, to begin with? Like we were talking about, this is a new industry, and how do you even get it on people's radar? And so knowing that we're, a high priority project for the community has been identified as an EV car share program. And so we've been conducting, dozens of these clarity sessions where we meet with community members individually and talk with them about what it would mean to them, what possibility would it open up for their lives if they had access to an electric vehicle in a car share program. And the things that people say when you ask them about what would be possible for you if you had an EV to drive, they say such beautiful things like, I would be able to have private time with my family, and we would have closer bonds because we could take this amazing car that's technologically advanced, and we would feel so much pride, and it would build so much connect. I mean, it makes you cry during these clarity sessions because it's so heartfelt, and you just get chills listening to these people talking about what it would mean for them to be not just in a car but in an EV, because it elevates their whole experience, and it makes
Mm.
them feel like they're part of something new and exciting. And I can't I don't want to underestimate the value of these clarity sessions, and how it's opening people up to just even talking about it makes them feel more powerful. And also then, then they don't see EVs as something for somebody else to have. Oh, they can have an EV, but that's not something that I feel comfortable with. Every person who we talk to in a clarity session wants to learn how to do this car share program. They've all opted into this upcoming webinar we're going to do. And that just opens up, the gateway to people wanting to learn more, to be more comfortable learning about these kinds of jobs, and seeing that EVs are for everyone and not just for people over there or over there.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I I think I'd like to just quickly add, I know we're getting close to the time,
Mhm.
is, what Daphne and John have talked about, John's in the Upper Valley and singing the praise of advanced transit. And, for us up here in Greater Burlington, Green Mountain Transit was just at a ribbon cutting yesterday where Green Mountain Transit, they had one of their electric buses because they are now getting into this like built up downtown area of South Burlington, which is a different city, not part of Burlington. And we need that ubiquity of electric vehicles that are accessible to all. And we need that shared mobility. So it isn't always like the single occupancy vehicle, but here we have electric car share as we do Car Share Vermont, and that we have these electric buses. So just like electric vehicles are, we should make them accessible to all. We really need to get choice riders on our transit. We need to get choice riders saying, wow, this is electric. This is fantastic. If you've been in an electric bus compared to a diesel one or riding your bike behind one, it really is fantastic. So let's celebrate our kind of transit providers and getting more people on fewer, higher efficiency vehicles and get folks trained to fix them, drive them, and plan for them.
That is a perfect way to round us out. Thank you all so much. I have had, the pleasure, we've all had the pleasure of working together for the past 2 years on this project. And so you can see that everybody here bounces off each other. And this was a really great conversation. So I hope you all in the audience enjoyed and took away some interesting lessons. I just have one slide just to round us out. If you would like to receive email updates about this project and events like this one, and you do not already, you can use the Microsoft Office form that Kelly just put in the chat. We send out roughly weekly emails about resources we're publishing. We are going to be publishing the workforce needs assessments kind of in report form from our 4 target communities. We are going to have a summary document that NEEP's going to make about the findings from the target communities. We're also planning to do a working group meeting about kind of how to take these needs and actually start to implement workforce development action items. The final webinar in our series for this year is going to be December 11th at 11 a.m. We don't have a lot of information out there just yet, but if you really love this one, you can put a hold on your calendar or just, again, sign up for our community of practice that gets our emails. And we have an in-person event coming up next month, just almost exactly a month away, which is heating electrification. So not transportation related, but I'm sure that, there's some crossover in this audience. I did say the word heat pump. It is a NEEP webinar. We're going to be in Princeton, New Jersey, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's really nice to be together in person. And it's a lovely time to be in a lovely place, Princeton. So I hope you can join us there. Thank you again to Daphne, Peggy, and John. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Chase.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.